Hi, my name is Chad Nelson, and welcome to my virtual senior project presentation, the capstone of my aviation management degree here at Walla Walla University. I called my project the Alaska Transition Training Program because I had two main goals. One was to complete my commercial seaplane rating at Kenmore Air, and the other was to get my tailwheel endorsement, enabling me to learn the basics of backcountry flying. I also wanted to build up my stick and rudder skill, and I wanted to acquire time in eccentric aircraft, all the while having a bit of fun. First of all, we'll talk about my seaplane training, and then we'll talk about my tailwheel training. I completed my seaplane training at Kenmore Air at the north end of Lake Washington in Seattle. I totaled 3 trips to Seattle starting in January. Most of my training was done with Brian Flagel. You can see him in the left of the picture. Total, I got about 7.4 hours of flight time, including the check ride. A lot of the training was done on Lake Washington. We also flew around the Hood Canal and Puget Sound. Kenmore has an in-house examiner for check rides, and so I was able to complete my FAA certification for my commercial seaplane add-on in-house at Kenmore, which was convenient. What does it take to get your seaplane rating? Well, since a seaplane flies mostly the same in the air as a land plane, the differences are in the takeoffs and landings and docking and beaching procedures. So those are what you practice a lot of in a seaplane. For the different takeoffs and landings, you have classy, rough, confined area, emergency, and crosswind takeoffs and landings. And for the ground knowledge, we go over checklists, make sure that I knew my maritime knowledge since we're on the water with vessels, regulations for seaplanes, weather, water dynamics, and aircraft systems. And here's a couple clips of some takeoffs and landings and flying around in Kenmore's Super Cubs. For study materials, I used the FAA Seaplane Operations Handbook and some handouts from Kenmore Air on the Piper Super Cub. Wanted to point out an important part of seaplane training, the float. As you can see at the bottom of the float, you have the step where the float starts tapering off towards the back. And this is important because in the first picture you see here, the aircraft is plowing through the water. It's not planing yet. And in the second picture, it's planing, which is called being up on step. And this is important. The step is important because now we have the space where the float can tilt back as the pilot pulls the stick back, which allows the airplane's wings to achieve the angle of attack necessary to get lift off the water. Also, when coming in for a landing, you set it in the same step attitude to achieve a smooth, safe landing. Here's a copy of my new pilot certificate. You can see I have my commercial seaplane license, and I'm very proud to have completed this and passed the check ride on my first try. Now we'll talk about tailwheel training. I started in Orofino, Idaho, and finished it here in Walla Walla. First of all, I flew with Ken Kyle. I started with him in October. He actually went to Walla Walla for a year in the 1970s. And he has a house on the Freeman Creek airstrip in Idaho. He owns a classic Cessna 180, and in one day we went about Idaho, and I got about 5 hours of flight time. We mostly practiced 3-point landings, did introduction to tailwheel, and also I learned the basics of mountain flying as we flew to various classic Idaho backcountry strips such as Moose Creek, Elk City, Shearer, and a host of others. And here's a quick clip of us flying into the Shearer Strip. Next, in Walla Walla, I completed my tailwheel endorsement with Eric Roberts and his white Tailorcraft that you can see in the bottom of the slide here. I started in December with him, receiving my tailwheel endorsement in December, and I also did some more training with him through March to become more proficient. We did intensive takeoff and landing training, practicing dozens and dozens of tail wheel landings, and three-point landings. He also gave me some more introduction to mountain flying in the Blue Mountains. I also got to fly with Michael Rothgeb in January in his orange Taylorcraft BC-12D. We did 2 flights, and one of them was in some quite deep snow, and that really gave me another experience on a new surface that I hadn't flown on before. He also taught me to hand prop an airplane and taught me about tube and fabric airplanes and tail wheel aircraft maintenance, which I found very valuable. What does it take to get your tail wheel endorsement? Well, a tail wheel aircraft flies the same in the air as a tricycle gear aircraft, so most of the time is spent practicing takeoffs and landings. The main ones are the three-point landing and wheel landings, but of course you also practice variations of these with crosswinds, emergency procedures, and then the off-airport operations and basic mountain flying. For ground knowledge, I studied tail dragger forces on takeoffs and landings, the aerodynamics of tail draggers, different techniques for safely flying tail draggers, and the different aircraft systems in the planes I was flying. This book on the left, The Complete Tail Dragger Pilot, was very helpful to me. It's very comprehensive and helped me gain a better understanding of what I was doing in a tailwheel aircraft. The book on the right has a great chapter on tail wheels, and this book is published by the FAA, the Airplane, the Flying Handbook. So the main difference between flying a tricycle gear airplane and a tailwheel aircraft is the location of the center of gravity. In a tricycle gear airplane, the center of gravity is ahead of the main gear, and a tailwheel aircraft, it's behind the main gear. So if a tailwheel aircraft turns too much, basically, the center of gravity assists excessively in the turn, and at some point, that center of gravity will cause the turning momentum of the airplane to become excessive, and the pilot's not able to control the turn anymore. This turns into what we call a ground loop, and the airplane will spin around on the ground, often tipping over, hitting a wing, and sometimes even flipping over. So a tail dragger takes a great deal more of finesse and attention to rudder inputs in order to keep it safe and straight. Here's an example of the three-point landing where the aircraft is in a full stall condition on touchdown. All 3 points touch down at the same time, and I'll show you a quick clip here of me doing a smooth one on the grass at Martin Field. The next landing is the wheel landing, where only the main gear touch on landing, and this is difficult to learn because as the main gear touches the pavement, the pilot gives a brisk forward pressure on the yoke, and this is counterintuitive to tricycle gear pilots because we don't push forward when we touch down in a tricycle gear airplane, but in a wheel landing, that's what you're supposed to do. Here's a picture of my tail wheel endorsement to see that I completed it, signed by Eric Roberts. Let's go over my expenses and hours that I spent on this project. I spent approximately $4,500, with Kenmore being the most expensive. I logged close to 8 hours of seaplane time, 60 hours of tailwheel time, even though I got my endorsement after 12 hours. I studied for about 15 hours and spent 30 hours plus driving to my different training appointments for a total of about 113 hours. In summary, getting my tailwheel endorsement and my commercial seaplane rating open up new job opportunities for me. They allowed me to build time in some eccentric aircraft, Cessna 180s, Piper Super Cubs, Taylorcrafts, gave me improved aircraft control, gave me a basic knowledge of mountain flying. Also, it allowed me to learn more about aviation business because I was able to purchase a tail dragger after getting my tailwheel endorsement. And while that wasn't part of my senior project, getting my tailwheel endorsement made it possible for me to do that. And I actually flew it across half of the United States with Austin Flagel. That was a really wonderful experience. And in general, this project helped me learn numerous practical aviation skills that I will use for a long time. So thank you for listening, and now I would be happy to answer your questions.